Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dot to Dot. Today I'm going to talk about, is the treasure removed from Oak Island? I'm also going to talk about the Oak Island map and some of the things that are coming up about that. But here's my copyright disclaimer. I'm going to be using some of other people's, and we're just using it for the copyrights of education, comment, criticism, and teaching. So I'm going to talk about the Oak Island Knights Templar and the Holy Grail Secrets of the Underground Project Revealed by Scott Wolters and Don Rue. Now, in this book, he claims, or they claim, that the Oak Island treasure is gone. It's removed. And this is something that I'm going to show that I'm not really buying it too much. I have some doubts, and I'll show you the reasons why. And we're also going to talk about the Oak Island map. And I'm going to give you basically the account of why this map is in existence through the eyes of Zena Halpern, and also, dispel some of the notions that have been brought forth. There's actually been 3 that have been brought forth by Scott Wolters. And also, this sigil right here at the top, this is portion of the 1179 map that was presented by Zena Halpern. And Olivier from Oak Island Research has done 2 videos in where he brings forth basically some of the things that were said in Scott Wolters' book about who possibly could have written the Oak Island map, which would be the sigil of CLY that you see at the top there, right under the Roman numerals 37, which is the page number. But go to the Oak Island Research channel. I'll leave a link in the description, and you can watch the last 2 videos that he's done, and he presents a really good argument about who CLY is and everything like that. It's been 4 years to the date that I've known that I had first contact with Olivier, and it's been great working with him. He's a great friend now, and I wish him the best. Thanks, Olivier, and for all the things that you've done with me over these last 4 years. So this is one of the pages in the book by Scott Wolters, and he starts out with this. Well, he doesn't start out, but in this book, he shows these grids that had this encryption on it. There was actually 3 of them, and in the last encryption was this: when they were done encrypting it, decoding it, it gave this message that was an account of the removal of the treasure on Oak Island by a man named Captain Timothy McLaren. And I've highlighted some of the things that I think are. It's great that they're giving so much detail, but I wonder why these details match so perfectly to the things that we know today. One of them is the 1769 date, which exactly matches the dendrochronology of the wood they found digging up the dock on Smith's Cove in 2018 or 19. And then we have the mention of La Formula and the 500 feet, which is mentioned in La Formula. And we have, of course, the huge oak is mentioned, and the block and tackle was mentioned, and the limb overhanging the the money pit. And then it goes on, and it talks about this creepy entrance to hell was closed, which I don't know about, but it also mentions the date 1795 and Rochefoucauld, which is mentioned on the Rochefoucauld map, and it mentions the McGinnises. And it's very interesting that so many perfectly, details that are linked to all the things about Oak Island are mentioned in this. And it almost seems like they're trying to convince us in some way. Somebody is trying to convince us that it's gone. And maybe it's true. I don't know. But one of the things about this, it was written in 1965. So this decoded message was written in 1965. You wonder why it had to be coded. But in 1965 was the year that came out, the Reader's Digest came out with this Oak Island article, which of course inspired the Laginas to go to Oak Island. And 1965, Dunfield, I mean, there was a lot of activity. Dunfield was there. Fred Nolan was just starting to arrive on the scene. Dan Blankenship was, I think, just starting to arrive on the scene. So it's possible that this may be just disinformation to discourage people from going there. So I think these, if there was an order, and if it still was going in 1965, which I think it may have been, they were trying to protect it. So this is the other piece of evidence that Scott Wolters gives, and here's a map. And if you see at the bottom of this map, there's a note that shows, and it's reference to basically the position on this map of Oak Island. It says treasure of deposit in 1395, and then Suprem Mem 1769, which he translates to be removed. And I have my doubts about this. I know Olivier made some comments. It can go either way, but I'm going to show you the definitions. And this is the dictionary, the French dictionary, where it goes back to 1694 all the way to the present. And this is the fourth volume, which is 1762. And we see the definition of supreme. Now, it would be used in the participle form. It wouldn't be a verb. It would be an adjective describing the treasure. And if you notice that this word means to delete, to suppress, and it doesn't really, in context, it doesn't have a object attached to it. It's usually used in the meaning of, say, writing or a document or a law or something that needs to be removed. But it's not removed in a way of physically removing it from one place to another. It just means to cancel it or to abolish it. So what are we talking about here? It could mean, if you look up there, it means also to silence, to pass over in silence, to hide. So it's something when you're trying to hide something. So could this word mean just to hide, or it is being suppressed? Now the next word, well, let's look at the word that could have been removed, and that's called enleve. And enleve is the word to remove, and in participle form, it would be removed. So why didn't he use this word? It was available in 1762. The next word is mem. Now, this is a complex word because it means, it's used in a lot of different ways. And it basically means the same. But it also can mean, it's also a, it modifies a verb, or it modifies in conjunction with an adjective to give a more emphasis to that. In other words, like if you said very special, okay, very special. He is very special. This would be one of the uses of mem. It's also used in pronouns and everything. It's very complex. But if you look at the second paragraph, you look down towards the bottom of that paragraph, and there's a sentence that says, it cost him his property and his very life, even his life. Now, mem is also used as the word even. And if you look on the left side, you see that you can correspond that with the sentence in French, and you can see it's put after his life. It's put after his life. And there's not an article between it like lay or la. Now, if it was used in the way back on that map as to say the treasure was removed, the same treasure was removed, there would have been an article between the word and mem. Mem, it would have been le mem or la mem or whatever gender it might have been. So this is what I think. I don't think it's saying that it's possibly not saying that it was removed, but that it is suppressed, very suppressed, and that they couldn't get to it. Or it could reference the map, that maybe that the map, the information of the map was deleted. So onto the Oak Island map, and I'm going to show 3 reasons, explanations of why they think the Oak Island map is not what it is, not what Olivier and I think it is. And the explanations, there's 3 that Scott Wolters has given. One was given around in 2017, 2018 on his blog. And Don Rue also was voicing his opinion on this. And he said that the Oak Island map was inscribed on the back of the 1815 letter, which was notably called the Eli letter. And it was used by the Spartan group to entice the P2, which was sort of a criminal organization in Italy, to bid on it. And this was brought forth, the proof, in this 1979 letter that was written by Bill Jackson. And the second one is Bill Jackson fabricated it as a map for a novel, but he never finished it. And then it became Don Rue hid the map in order to test Zena Halpern's loyalty to him and not go on the Oak Island show. So the rebuttal to these explanations is, first of all, the Oak Island map was not on the back of the Eli letter. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes. And the second rebuttal to the second explanation is Bill Jackson hid the Oak Island map as one of his key finds. And I'm going to show you a letter he wrote that says that he hides his finds. So if he fabricated it for a novel, why did he call it a key find? And then the third, this is just absurd though. The Oak Island map was found in 2011, and it was in Zena's possession in 2010, long before the Oak Island show contacted her. So that third one is just a ridiculous one. So the Oak Island map begins with a note that was found. There's 2 books, The Introduction to Anthropology and The Hebrews Before the Palestines. So the first book, which is like this one here, had this note written on the back page. And this note was written by Bill Jackson. And if you notice, these are the notes of Zena Halpern. If you look at the top, you can see that this was something that was given, or something that Don Rue had found. Her and Zena Halpern and Don Rue had found this a year prior, okay, to finding the map in the Yanati book. So Don Rue had this book, which had the note in it, and Zena had the other book, which the map was in 2010. So you also see up here, she says that the reason Don Rue came over was to give her a bookshelf for her birthday. So this was on March 27th, 2011, on Zena Halpern's birthday. That was the reason for his visit. So here is the what the note says, so you can read it. And it says, Anati holds the key now. So in other words, the key, whatever's in the Anati book is the key. That's why I use this page. And this was written on the last page of the book. The Frenchman was right. They wanted the information about the tunnels. Now, this is important. Who are they? Well, it could be those people, the P2 people, or, this also has links to the Vatican. So it could be that these guys were in competition with some other organizations trying to get this information. And he talks about the document that was broken up into 8 pieces. Now, he only has 4 in 1996, but they end up coming all together. And it's not really 8, it's actually 7, and we're going to see that in a minute. And then there's a reference, La Bella Donna della Mia Mente, Les Orchestra. I don't know what Les Orchestra means, the oyster, but the one above it is a reference to a poem. And this was brought to my attention by Olivier because it's hard to read the handwriting one, and it was not completely clear until recently. And this is the poem that it references by Oscar Wilde. Notice the date, around 1854 to 1900 was his life. And we don't know why the poems are mentioned, but it could mean because the Rochefoucauld note on the Oak Island map requires some knowledge of poetry, namely the form of the Alexandrine poetry form, in order to solve it. So this may be one of the reasons. So this is the second book, Palestine Before the Hebrews. This is the one that Zena had at her house, and she looked through it for, I don't know, but she had it about a year. And this is where they found the Oak Island map. So this is the note of Zena Halpern explaining recalling the event of when they found it. And she mentions that, Don had come over to give her a corner shelf that he made for her birthday. And because Don had the other book, he probably had been mulling over the note in the back, and he understood maybe what the last page meant, and that Anati held the key. And Zena's basically explaining that he took a knife and he slit open the back page of the Anati book because Don felt something thick in it. And inside this little pocket that was constructed was this card. This is a card, not a piece of paper folded like we see on the show. That was a photocopy of this card. And I'll show you in a minute why this is true. You can see at the bottom it says, Don has enlarged this card that he can read the French. So here's the card. And this card is approximately, I would guess, 3 by 5, maybe 6 by 4 inches. Very small. I think it's a photograph. I think Olivier thinks it's possibly a photograph from a microfiche because of the shadowing that is in the vignetting of the shadowing in the corners. But you can see it's small. So this document, I believe, must have been a lot larger. And this is just a photograph of it. And this is what Bill Jackson obtained, supposedly, actually, according to Don Rue, in 1994. So, and in there also was La Formula. Now you can see La Formula is like a piece of paper. I don't know how large it is actually, but it has 3 components to it. It has the La Formula, which is in the form of one of the pieces of what they were talking about in that note. It was broken up into 8 pieces. It's actually 7. And it forms what's called the Antaros schematic. It's one of the pieces of that. And I'll show you that in a few minutes. But then we have the cryptic note to Mr. Hayward and a reference to another poem. And then we have in the lower left-hand corner a note. And this is important. It says Tim McGinnis to, and I have an enlargement of this note. I'm going to show you. Let's put that up. So this is the letter that was written by Bill Jackson. And it is the letter that says that Bill Jackson was telling Don Rue that they wanted him to inscribe something, and this was the Spartan group that Bill Jackson was working with. And the Eli letter is mentioned. You can see we needed to come up with some means to entice the propaganda dual people to want to bid on the Eli letter, whose back we have imprinted with the design that appears to have the solution to the Oak Island treasure. So this is where they get the explanation that what was imprinted on the back of the Eli letter was the Oak Island map. And that's just simply false. According to Don Rue in the book Scrolls of Antiara and Zena Halpern. And this is a letter, email from Zena Halpern, or to Zena Halpern from one of her colleagues. And one of her colleagues asks the question, do you know what year they found La Formula page and the map in the cave? So Zena starts off with correcting her. La Formula and the Oak Island map were not found in the cave at Hunter Mountain, and she explains what was found in the cave. And the cave was a 3-part sketch and the 1815 letter that were found in 1978. So the 1815 letter is the Eli letter. And number 2, she goes on to explain, notice that she explains where they found the Oak Island map in La Formula, and the year was 2011. Very important, way before the Oak Island show. And then she also mentions the 1 of 7. And I cut off on the last segment, but this is an important part. This Tim McGinnis to David David Jackson, 1 of 7, because that references to the puzzle pieces. So this is the Eli letter, and the Eli letter was cut in half. You can see it's cut in half there, and they took it back after they dug it up out of the cave. They cut it in half when they were digging it up. They put it back together. And it's a eerie letter. It's about a man named Captain Jake, I believe, Douglas, is writing about this event that happened somewhere in the mountains or something, probably near Hunter Mountain. And they were in battle with some group up there. I don't know what it is, but he actually gets mortally wounded. And he states in the letter that he's mortally wounded, and he must have buried the letter in the cave when he died. So it's sort of sad. But you can see at the top, that's why it's called the Eli letter, because it's being written to a person, I think like a Lieutenant Ed Eli or something. But that's why it's called the Eli letter, and it's dated 1815. So according to Zena Halpern and also the Scrolls of Antiara by Don Rue, this is what is inscribed on the back of the Eli letter. And you can read at the top, this is the sketch that Jackson found in the cave with Robert Terrence in the cave of Hunter Mountain in 1996. Now I think she had 1996 on the brain because of what that year. That's what they found. That's when they found the note that was in the back of the Introduction to Anthropology. But she said in her previous correspondence that it was 1978. But this is what was on the back. Notice that the shape of one of the pieces is the same as La Formula. Now, they didn't know that at the time in 2010, because in 2010 they hadn't discovered La Formula, but they make mention of it later. And you can see on the far left-hand side it says Isle Le Chena, the Isle of the Oaks. Now, in the original Antaros pieces, these are part of the Antaros schematic, and these are 3 of the 7 pieces. So did Bill Jackson inscribe this on the back of the Eli letter, or was it already on there? We don't know. This is La Formula, and we mentioned that before. And you can see that the shape of it is very similar to what was on the back of the Eli letter. So this is the note on the bottom of La Formula, and it is referencing Mr. Hayward, who died in 1978 at the age of 80. And then he also has this reference to this poem by Paul Valéry. And then you also see the note at the lower left-hand corner, Tim McGinnis to W. David Jackson, 1 of 7 in French. And this is Paul Valéry. And the bottom of that is the quote, "The wind is rising, we must try to live." We don't know, but Olivier did a video on Dead Poets Society called the Dead Poets Society, where he makes some connections with these poetry references and the connection of these poets. These poets were actually contemporaries, so they knew each other. What they knew, who knows? Why they're being referenced here, we don't know. Here's an enlarged picture of the note. And it's not Jim McGinnis. His name is really Jim. It's Tim McGinnis in this. And there's a lot of speculation that Jim McGinnis was, part of the CIA, and that's how he met Bill Jackson, because he was working with the Spartan group, who were working in the 1970s with, whatever was going on with P2 and this treasure. And that's pretty interesting. Here's the La Formula on the left-hand side, and the right-hand side is the shape of 1 of 7 of the pieces. This is the first. This is the middle piece of the puzzle of the Antaros schematic, and this is made of 7 pieces. And here it is, right here. It's supposed to be 7 pieces, but if you look at the very top there, 1 is ripped. So it really is 8 pieces, but it's designed to be, it was cut into 7 pieces. So this showing the tunnels, and this schematic, it shows, you can see on the left-hand side, the branches that go to the flood tunnel to the money pit, what we call the money pit, with the layers of logs. And then you have the A, which is where you dig down 40 feet, and then B, where you enter the tunnel. This is mentioned in the decryption of the La Formula code. And then you have A or C, which is L'Hamp, which is like a valve, and that's mentioned in La Formula. And then you have the valve or the vault. And then on the far right-hand side, you have the valve and the hole under the trapdoor, which are shown on the Oak Island map. So this corresponds to the Oak Island map, but they don't call this a forgery. Nobody's make mention of this as being faked or anything like that. So anyway, Anadi holds the key now. That's why I use this page. And so here's I'm showing this note because it mentions the 8 pieces. It mentions the pieces of the document that shows the tunnels. So this must be the document that it was central to this note. And the formula and the Oak Island map have a connection through this note to the Antaros schematic. So this is one of the reasons why I think Bill Jackson considered the Oak Island map as one of his finds. It wasn't something that he just made to write a novel. And this is a letter that is on page 189 of the Scrolls of Antaros by Don Rue, and it shows it is a quote from Bill Jackson to, I believe it's his daughter. I don't know who it's written to, but it gives the explanation why he hid most of his finds, basically to keep him from his wife because she didn't like what he was doing. He's probably spending a lot of time, and she would throw him out. So it's sort of funny. Notice it was written in 1994 too. This is before he hid the Oak Island map. So he was doing this with other things too. So, one of the great evidences that I think, in my opinion, the Oak Island map is the discovery that Olivier made a few years back about the decryption of the Rochefoucauld note at the upper, you can see it in the upper left-hand corner, where we get the start through the decoding of that Alexandrine poem that gives you two vectors that start the geometric progression, and it gives a reference to the scale that matches the scale that matches the measurements of Nolan's cross. And it basically, that's what it does, is when you use Thales' principle of geometry and project it down below to the Oak Island map, you get the axis of Nolan's cross. And that's basically what it does. It gives you the axis of Nolan's cross. And then through other geometric progression, you find the valve and the hole under the trapdoor, and you can make calculations to where they are on the island once you know their reference to Nolan's cross. And Nolan's cross, since I've converted all my data to the numbers that Brian Farrow mentioned, the sacred numbers, things worked out really much better. And what's interesting about Nolan's cross, and these are some of the geometric forms I think I did in my last video, is it has the proportions of Nolan's cross have a function of geometry that is just awesome. It's just great. You can see this triangular geometry that where the hypotenuse of that triangle goes through the drilled rocks, and the base of those triangles match exactly to the distances on Nolan's cross axis. The 288 is the perpendicular base from cone B to that drilled rock on lot 15. And the south anchor, which is, by the way, part of the Oak Island map, the base of that triangle, when you go down to that, is the same as cone D to cone E. So that's all I have for you today, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.